we're in a very like fast paced world. We have access to everything right now. It's like problem solution. And kids just don't work that way. Humans just don't work that way. Our brains don't work that way. So it's a little bit more complicated than that.
And here we are. We are live once again for this month's episode of Mental Wealth. Hello, Laura. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing awesome. Welcome again.
Thank you. Exciting times.
Yes, I am just pulling up our show so that way I can see the comments and the questions as they come in. For those of you who might just be joining us, didn't catch us last month, this is kind of a new thing that Laura and I are doing for the MOMnation audience. I'm super excited about it because I think it's just like so needed. These are the topics that we really need to talk about and the information that we really need to share. So we are here talking about one topic per month, and we are taking live questions, comments, whatever it is you want to throw at us. I'm watching it. So as long as we are on, we will do our very best to get to all the questions. I think we may have, let's see, we already have one. We have Amy Taylor on. Hello, Amy. I think we got to all the questions last time, or we did a very good job. So doing our best to keep an eye on that. We want you guys to get the questions that you have answered, and away we go. So today's topic is an interesting one, Laura.
Yeah, today's topic is fun. It's one of my favorites. I always think about this language of keeping the child's mind in mind. So today, I wanted to just talk about addressing kind of tricky behaviors and doing so while keeping the child's mind in mind, because we get a lot of questions as a counselor. I get a lot of questions about my kid's doing this. How do I get them to stop? How do I change this behavior? What is this behavior? And unfortunately, my answer to everyone is always, well, it's not about the behavior.
Right.
What's going on in the child's mind, right? So that's kind of where keeping the child's mind in mind comes into play. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that and kind of what that means.
I love that, because I feel like, as adults, as parents, doing all the things that we do, we kind of forget, hey, this kid's 8. This kid has not lived, like I've lived 3 of his lifetimes or more. Okay. So it's more. All right. If you can do math, it's way more, so I've lived like 5 of his lifetimes and, you kind of forget, I think, when you're in the heat of the moment, or, you have a behavior that's frustrating for everybody involved. I feel like you forget that. So.
Yeah, for sure. We get so transactional, right? What's the problem to solve? Problem, solution, moving on, right? Like we're very transactional in our daily life as we're in a very like fast paced world. We have access to everything right now. It's like problem, solution. And kids just don't work that way. Humans just don't work that way. Our brains don't work that way. So it's a little bit more complicated than that. And I wish that there was an easy answer to all of the posts. And I try to get in and kind of say, I'll usually, when I reply to posts like in MOMnation, when moms are like, I'm tearing my hair out, like I try to get in and reply sometimes to just be like, hey, I'm a therapist. Here's what's happening. Hope that helps, because I never have a quick solution. And I always see these other moms who are saying like, oh, here's a tip, which tips are good. But I always find myself thinking, I don't know enough information in order to provide that tip, because I don't know the kid. And so moms, your kids, what's going on, what's in their mind. And so it's really about that child. It's not about all children.
Right. It's not a one size fits all scenario.
Right. And so that's why with those, those things where it's like, I wish that there was one answer that I could give that says like, oh yeah, do this and that'll stop. And so that's a tough one when it's addressing a specific kid. But how do you know then what's going on in your child's mind, right? Like, what are some things that you can tell about your child? Like what are some tricky behaviors, right, that you see that maybe you're like, oh, okay, this is why he's doing that. Do you have anything specific that comes to mind? I mean, because I can come up with a couple too. I have my own kids.
Not at the moment, but you come up with a couple and let's talk about those.
Okay.
And then maybe I'll have some.
Yeah. So I'll just start with my example of my middle child. My middle child who is, he struggles to wake up and go to school sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, everybody. So I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? What I would want to do is go in and just be like furious and be like, get up and go to school, or I'm taking all your shit. And then, you know, now you're in trouble and I'm super mad at you. And, you know, I just want to go in and yell at him and be like, just do it. You don't have a choice. Right. That's kind of what happens in my head.
Right.
So then I back out and then I say, okay, what's going on with this kid? So he's not waking up. He doesn't want to go to school. So then is yelling. So I asked myself first, is yelling at him going to change? Is it going to be helpful or is it going to not be helpful? Right? Like, what are the odds that me yelling are going to be the solution to this? Probably not.
I don't
right?
know that it ever is.
It's not going to be it. So,
Yeah.
Okay, yelling's not going to be it. What's he going through? He's struggling right now. I'm thinking, okay, what do I feel like in the morning? Okay. So I put myself in his shoes. Like, mornings are tough. School's tough. So then I'm thinking, what else is going on? Because you normally like school. So I'm kind of thinking about, I'm just like inventorying, like checking this environment. Like, did something happen at school? Did he get a bad grade? Is he behind? So I realized, well, he was out for a couple of weeks with COVID. So he's fallen behind in his classes. So now he feels like he's so far behind that he's not gonna be able to catch up. Okay. So that now is the reason why he's not getting up to go to school. Now,
it's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. He feels like he's failed.
Yeah.
Who wants to go to school feeling like they failed?
Mm-hmm.
They're already like, I can't even imagine that. Like, I wouldn't want to do that. That's so awful. Can you imagine going into work and having not done all of your work and then people expect you to have things done and you're just like, nope, missed all those deadlines.
Sorry.
Sorry to be here.
Yeah.
That's crazy, right? So that's me kind of thinking about, okay, what's going on for the child? And then, so, okay, I kind of know that that's the thing. So how can my language help or hurt that? Okay, so this is where the interaction comes in. Because at this point, I haven't even interacted with him. All I've done is thought things through.
Right.
So now I'm thinking, okay, my kid feels like a failure. Is saying to him, hey, I'm really disappointed in you because you're not doing your job. Is that going to help?
It just adds more disappointment. He's already feeling disappointed in because of the whole behind thing.
That's right. Or could I say, hey, when you get home, like, why don't we go in together and talk to your teachers about getting this work caught up? Or, you know, how can I help make this easier? I know that you felt, you got behind, like, what can we do? Can I get you a tutor? Can I, right? Like, so thinking about, hey, what can I do to be supportive? Kind of going in, I really understand that you are not into school right now. Like, it feels crappy to go. I get that. Unfortunately, that doesn't take away the fact that we have to go.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we're still going to make the kid go, but we're going to do it in a way that's like, I'm not mad at you for not going. Not mad at you because it's not personal. It's not a personal
It's
attack.
it's not because of you.
It's not about me. So it's about the child. That's the mind, keeping the child's mind in mind. I'm not mad. I'm here to help you in any way that I can. I'm here to keep you physically and emotionally safe. That's what I'm here to do. And so I'm always going to do that no matter what. Even if you fail this whole semester, still going to love you. It's going to be okay. We'll take summer school, right? Mm-hmm. So just reassuring them that it's not about me. I'm not mad. It's not a fracture in our relationship. And then we kind of say, okay, what's the expectation? Okay, so then where's the consequence? I have to take your bad news. I'm going to take your phone until we get caught up, until we get back to school, until we get back in attendance, right? So when you go to school on time, you get your phone. If we don't go to school on time, we don't get the phone, right? That's the consequence. I'm not mad. It's not personal. It's just, that's the transit. That's what has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because you deserve for somebody to help you grow and hold you accountable. You deserve that. Everybody does.
Mm-hmm.
So we're sort of backing out And that was kind of a long explanation. It doesn't, a lot of this just happens in seconds, like
quickly
in your mind, right?
Yeah.
Right? It's happening faster, but to get into the habit of thinking, how is my approach towards the kid going to make them feel? And is that feeling going to be motivating or going to be harmful for them?
Mm-hmm. Right. Because I mean, the thing that you definitely don't want to do, especially at that age, is drive a wedge in between you and make them feel like, oh, now I can't be honest. Now I can't share stuff with my mom because, you're expressing that disappointment. And I think it's important to differentiate, hey, it's not you I'm disappointed in, but it's the situation we got to fix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's not you as a human. Right? Because I still, like, we have expectations and we have consequences, but what we have all the time, no matter what you do, no matter what your behaviors are, no matter how difficult this gets, what I'm never going to take away, a consequence is never that you don't get love.
Right.
A consequence is that never that you don't get care from me, is never that I'm not going to keep you safe. I'm not going to keep you emotionally safe with me. Because that's what I hear. I hear kids who are like, when my mom yells at me, I think they don't love me.
Mm-hmm.
Because do we yell at people we love? Well, I mean, sometimes, but do we want to not? Probably. We want to stop.
Exactly. I mean, in a healthy environment, in a healthy scenario, no, we do not.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see why a kid would feel that way and why that would be the conclusion that they came to.
Yeah, it's confusing. And so, like, our kids think like a child. You don't know anything. You're just wandering around like, oh, that person's yelling. That's scary. They must be angry. They must be dangerous. They must be, something bad is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, like, the level of fear that is raised up in a child when we raise our voices is so incredibly disproportionate to what point we're actually trying to get across.
Mm-hmm. And they don't know, keeping in mind, they haven't lived as long as we have. So they're not going through all this saying, well, mom's stressed out because, she works and she's a single mom and all this stuff. And, whereas I think sometimes that's our excuse. Well, I just got super frustrated quick. And, because I have all these things going on, the kids don't get that.
They don't have the capacity, right? They don't have the capacity to empathize at that level. Mm-hmm. It's just not developmentally possible. So, I mean, shit, we don't even really have the capacity, right? Like, right. If your husband comes in and yells at you, are you going to be like, oh, that's okay, honey, because you had a bad day? I know it's not about me.
Right. No,
I'm absolutely not going to think that. I'm going to think, why are you mad at me? What did I do? How can I fix it? Like, I'm going to go into child mind. Mm-hmm. And try to fix whatever is wrong because there's a fracture in our relationship. If you're coming at me, if you're not treating me with love and affection and kindness, I'm going to automatically think, oh, is there something wrong? Like, you're getting distant. Maybe there's infidelity. Maybe, like, now I'm like, my trust issues are coming out. Like, now
I'm all crazy. Yeah.
Like, spinning out. Right. Okay. Cut to a little kid who isn't tying their shoes fast enough. And we're like, just get in the fucking car, right?
Yeah.
Like, just get in the car. We have to go.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I've heard it.
Yeah.
I might say I've done it a few times,
totally, Yeah. We make mistakes. That's okay. But just like in our adult relationships, we can't expect the other person, the child in this case, to just get it. We can't. Right. How do we prepare that in an adult relationship? We say, ugh, you know what, man? That is my bad. I did not mean to snap at you when you asked me why we're having long pasta instead of, like, the penne noodles that I like. That's my bad. I totally didn't mean to snap at you about that. I was just going through a lot in that moment, but whatever, we can talk about it now that I'm grounded. Cool. And then everything's fine. Right. Because do we make mistakes? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when we have kids and we make mistakes, we go back and we say, man, you know what? This morning when we were running late, I got really overwhelmed, didn't I? I got out of control, didn't I? That was probably really confusing and scary for you. I just want you to know that that was not because of you. That was because of me. Something happened that made me stressed out, and I didn't do a good job of calming down. And so I want you to know that that's my thing. That was on me. Okay, Mom, love you.
And that's how they do, right? I mean, that's how they act after, because they're like, okay, I got acknowledged, cool, and my mom still loves me. Great, carry on, back to Pokemon or whatever it is that's going on. But that's the part that I don't, and I'm not in everybody's house. It's just, you know, from conversations, from posts, from things that I see out on the street, in the parking lot, whatever. But that's the part that I think is less common. The actually, you know, treating them like they're people, and owning up to your own shit that just happened, whatever. You know, I think that's the part that's missing from a lot of these scenarios that happen as kids grow up.
Yeah. Why is that though? So I can totally relate. I was a yeller. My kids are older. They're teenagers. One's an adult, which is weird. But yeah, so my kids are older. And I'll tell you what, if I had them 5 years ago, they would have a whole different mom than they did when I had them 20 years ago. So to be fair, that I have done all the things that I talk about now as, hey, this is what happens to kids when we do that. Like, I know this because I've done it and because I've learned from it. So what happens when we can't own up to it? Like, why not just apologize to the kid?
Why not? It's the same reason that we can't apologize to our spouses. It's the same reason we can't apologize to our parents, our friends, you know, same reasons.
We can't let them win. We can't let them think they're right. We can't let them think it's okay to do the bad thing, right? Like as if we're like being a pushover or something. Like that's our ego, that's our stuff, that's our own fears. We as moms start to get in this like tug of war with like, am I being played? How many of us think about that? Like, am I being played right now by my 6-year-old? Like, what is happening? And so we get sucked in. It's just part of the experience for us. And so when we get sucked into that, that's what makes it so hard, is because that triggers our defense mechanisms.
Right.
Like I can't be, I've got to defend myself. I'm like a threat. I'm being threatened. Right. So it's like, we see our kids as a threat in some way. And that's just because of our old stuff. That's because of our histories, our biology, our family history, our experience with our own parents. Like, so our attachment stuff is triggered in those moments, which makes it really hard not to defend. So when we feel like we're being played by our toddlers, then that's a good indication that we are being triggered and we're reenacting something from the past. And so it's not about what's happening now. So that's kind of when we stop and say, okay, my 6-year-old is not a criminal mastermind. Okay. That's not what's happening here. That's not at all. This is parenting and it's hard. And nobody ever said that it was going to be easy. And I just need to take a beat before I react to this so that I don't flip my lid. Right. Because you can't not be triggered. You're going to get triggered. Right. It's just about taking that step back and just realizing who's the adult. I'm the adult in this situation. And that means I can't be manipulated by this child, because to what end, right? So whenever I think about my kid manipulating me, I think, what do I think their goal is?
Right.
To manipulate me right now. Like, are they going to they're trying to get me to give them more affection than they deserve or something, or like they're trying to get me to what it doesn't make any sense. Like once you really try to play it out to the end, once you get in it, you're going to realize that whatever you're thinking they're trying to do doesn't actually make any sense. And so it doesn't matter. Like we can get back out. Right. Like, but when we're in that defense, I call it a trance dance. It's actually, I don't just call it that. It's called that. A trance dance is when we're both like in this defensive posture. And as moms and kids, we're just stuck in this reenactment interaction that's not actually about what's happening now. It's just our survival strategies, like fighting with each other.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good opportunity. I feel like when that does happen, you take that minute, step back before you react, run it through your head. Okay, he's 6 or whatever it is.
Right.
That's a great opportunity to say, I was just triggered. What's that all about? Yeah. And especially if you don't know what it's about, it's time to do a little bit of digging. And if you do, then it's an opportunity for you to realize real time where your triggers are at and give you that opportunity to kind of work on that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, definitely. And then the funny thing, like, as we're raising kids, our kid stuff gets triggered. That's the whole mental wealth, right? That's the different legacy that we started with. When we're raising kids, our kid mind gets triggered and we start reenacting what we didn't get as kids. So we feel like this child isn't loving me enough. This child isn't respecting me enough. This child isn't giving me what I need. That's a child reenactment. Mm-hmm. It's not the child's job to love me. Mm-hmm. It's not the child's. I'm the one with the life vest here. I'm the one with the raft. They're the one in trouble. I need to save them. That's my job, is to help them, to save them, to be there for them. It's not the other way around. And so if I'm feeling that way, that's the reenactment. That's the history. That's the child's mind. If I'm starting to think about my child as if they're personally like offending me in some way, then I need to stop and recognize I'm an adult. This is a hurt child. What would I do if I saw a hurt child in the parking lot by themselves?
Right.
I would probably want to help them. Right. So now, even though this hurt child is screaming at me, telling me they hate me, scratching my face, cutting up my clothes, I don't know, whatever the kid's doing, right? Because these behaviors are really hard.
It happens. Yeah.
It happens. So even though that's what's happening, I have to really, really use my skills to say, okay, this is a hurt kid. They're not getting something that they need. They feel scared. They feel like they're in danger and they're acting out because of it. They feel like they're in danger. They feel like they're in danger. Get that into my head.
Right.
Help them know that they're safe. And that's it. It's not about me. I have to say, this isn't about me. But as a mother, our biology is wired to believe that it's us. Like it's literally just like it's an automatic process that we start with. We have to work backwards from there.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like, dealing with behaviors and keeping the child's mind in mind, a couple of months ago, my husband was diagnosed with ADHD. Mm-hmm. And that has opened up this whole world of discovery for the both of us. And I feel like a lot of times there are behaviors that are happening with our kids that are because of reasons like that have been undiagnosed, that haven't surfaced yet for whatever reason. And I think it also, when we're having a struggle like that, it allows another opportunity to look deeper into the situation and into the kids' the whole scenario. And there could be a medical issue there. And I think a lot of times, as parents, we get so busy and we're working and we're doing all the things because there's just so many things to do, right? There's so many things. And you want to show up at that birthday party over the weekend and you want to be all the things that you aspire to be in terms of parents. But I feel like that distracts us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so we may not, and it may not be something that we're doing intentionally by any means, but we may not take a step back and say, what could be going on that is causing, chemically or physically that is causing this behavior.
Yeah.
And I think that's giant.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so. I also think there's a conflict sometimes between what we see as organic medical stuff and other behavior stuff because it feeds itself. So take, for example, ADHD. A lot of times kids with ADHD and with ADHD type behaviors, they are labeled the bad kid.
Yeah.
They're labeled, well, they're just obnoxious. They talk all the time. They're always moving. They have too, like, they're basically just like too much, right? So then think about that and how that affects your sense of self.
As they're being treated this way by teachers, parents, grandparents.
Exactly. So we almost like separate them sometimes, like, oh, it's ADHD, that's going to fix it. Sometimes that fixes part of it. The medicine, the whatever, the accommodations. But how do we treat the child as a human being with an identity? Mm-hmm. And how is that identity being shaped by the way we're interacting with them? Are we labeling them? And I don't even want to say the word labeling. I want to say, are we expecting them to not meet our expectations? Are we expecting them to be too much? And is it a joke in the family about it? Mm-hmm. Is it, oh, that's just, Charlie. He's always like that. Charlie's crazy. We all know that. Mm-hmm. He's the loud one. So like, I'm a little kid, right? And I'm like, I guess I'm only just like loud. So, nobody really, like, I'm only going to get love if I'm, a certain way, and other people get treated differently, but I'm never going to get that because that's not who I am. Right. Like, so all kids really need to know, and this is what their mind needs to feel from us as parents, is they are being kept physically and emotionally safe because they deserve to be physically and emotionally safe. They deserve to be treated with respect. They deserve to have adults keep their word. They deserve to have adults communicate with them when they've made a mistake. They deserve to have their voice heard, even if that doesn't change the outcome of the discipline or the consequence. But they deserve that because we deserve that. So everything that you think you deserve, apply that to the child and think to yourself, is that how do I show them that? Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And, back to what you were saying, this is something that affected me as a child, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in future episodes. But you had said, is it just a family joke about Charlie? And does everybody like kind of pick on Charlie about it or tease Charlie? And as adults, again, we've lived so many more lifetimes than they have, like, we know when we're joking or it's just playing, or we're just teasing. We may do it to each other, but when you do it to another adult, like they get that. Kids don't.
They don't.
And I was picked on rather heavily from some family members. And, now in my adult life, looking back on it, that was just their way of kind of playing with me and whatever, but it did some damage, let me tell you. Yeah. Real damage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, we know when each other's joking, but how many times has somebody, think about our adult relationships, man. Like, if my boyfriend makes a joke about something that like I low-key kind of am insecure about.
Yeah. Right.
Now I'm like, is that all he's gonna, now I need to right? Like, let's say he makes a joke about like my hips or something. Right. And I'm like, okay, I got to work out. Like, even though it's a joke and I know he's joking, like that still triggers something in me. Mm-hmm. Now I still feel like, oh, well, maybe he doesn't like that. Like, maybe I need to change that. Like, right. So that's my child stuff coming out. Mm-hmm. Which is, I need to be good enough. That made me feel not good enough. So now I'm going to try to do everything I need to do in order to be good enough for him. That's not real. That's real, but it's not facts. That's my stuff. And so when we have kids and we make jokes, they don't understand what's okay and what's not. And they don't understand what's a joke and what's not. And when we do this all the time. This is actually really interesting. We do this all the time. We're such hypocrites, right? Like we'll say in everything, like, I hate something, and then I'll go and do it, right? Like I don't know, like we we talk about like texting and driving.
Yeah, good example.
How many moms have been called out by their kids for texting and driving?
Right?
Right? So many. Like that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Like just benign stuff that we say, oh, well, don't do this, but then we do it. Right? That is so incredibly confusing for kids. Like literally, I hear about this from my kids all the time, like my client kids. They'll be like, yeah, my mom, like, I don't understand. She says one thing and then she does another thing and it just doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, what does that make you feel like? I bet that makes you wonder like whether or not what you're doing is okay, because sometimes it might be okay, but other times it might not be okay. So you never really know if you're going to get in trouble. Oof.
Yeah.
Scary and confusing. Like I'm on edge already. I'm like,
that makes my armpit sweaty.
Right? Like now, so it's like, and we don't realize because these are just regular stuff.
Right.
But we're not keeping the child's mind in mind and understanding that like they see this behavior and they think like, oh, so if you yelled at me one time, but then another time you didn't yell at me, but then another time you yelled at somebody else and another time, like you're all right. Like, then I'm basically just like eggshells. I'm like, is this cool? Are we good? Like, what do like, so it's sort of like the inconsistency that we don't really think about is really what can stir up a lot of anxiety in a kid. Like, think about how vulnerable a little kid is. You're a little baby. You can't do anything without a parent. If somebody's not there, you'll die straight up.
Right.
So when we are not okay, when we're stressed out, crying, having problems at work, getting sick, like all of this stuff, these are things that just happen to adults. These are adult things. But when our kids see that, they think that puts them in danger. So that's when we get difficult behaviors because our kids feel like they're in danger. And it's not about anything we're doing. It's not our fault. It's just that if you think about a human as an organism, a kid cannot survive without an adult. If the adult caretaker is sick or sad or stressed, well, then the kid feels like they're not safe.
Right.
This is a fact. It's a biological truth. So when they have these behaviors and we say, ugh, really right now? Like, can't you see that I'm stressed out right now? And like, now you're going to act up? Like, this is not helping. Whoa, now that's even now as the kid, I'm like, oh my God, now I just made myself even more unsafe. So now I'm even more I'm in so much more danger. Now I'm like going to freak out even more. So it's like, it just escalates and it gets worse and worse and worse. And so if we can kind of take a step back and go, okay, if I'm not okay seeming, if I seem like I'm not okay, it would make sense for my kid to feel like things aren't okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when they start to act out, I can just recognize like maybe they just need some reassurance that they're safe. So I might just be like, hey, let's sit down and color for a little. Like, let's just be together. Like, I really am glad you're here or whatever. Or like say something about whatever's going on. Like, sometimes adults get really stressed out, but I'm really glad that when I'm home, we can all just spend nice time together or whatever. I don't know. Just reassure that everything's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the kid they'll restabilize. So they destabilize when they're in danger. They restabilize when they're safe. And so as a parent, we've got to remember what puts children in danger. It's a lack of attachment. It's a lack of physical safety, emotional safety. It's the threat of being alone, isolated, that deep sense of aloneness that equals internal annihilation. Kids are just literally 1/2 a second away from danger at any moment because they're so ill-equipped to save themselves.
Right.
So they're all over the place.
So when you walk in and your kid's not going to school and you decide to yell at him and all of that, like was your example in the beginning, you're sort of establishing all of those fears and worries that you just rattled off.
Right. I'm proving his point.
Yeah.
that he's a failure and that I'm not going to love him and that he's going to end up being right. Like I'm literally proving his point. And I'm engaging in it. I'm leaning into it.
Right. And it eliminates that connection because he's not going to come forth and with a connection with you if that's how you're behaving. And you're obviously not emitting, the things that you need to encourage the connection, in other words. And so huge, like it's a huge loss.
Yeah. And now it's not safe for him to even come to me because I'm obviously going to just yell. I'm so mad at him. He could catastrophize that into thinking like, well, she doesn't even, if I don't go to school, like she doesn't even love me anymore. Like she's mad at me. She hates me. She probably doesn't want anything to do with me. Like that's where we go when we're in danger, right? Like when we're in our danger zones, like our brain will take us to the worst case scenario every time.
Right.
That's happening for them too.
Right. And if there were some underlying issues that you might not have been privy to yet, so he's behind in school, so that's probably a thing. But what if something happened at school, some kid said something to him, he got embarrassed somehow, like now he's going to be less apt because that connection has dwindled, right? So now he's going to be less apt to share that with you. Now you just screwed yourself because you don't have an opportunity to really get to know your kid. And you're going to be screwed for the rest of the time. And this is just basically how it's going to go. Like, until you fix that and stop running in that circle.
It's a cycle for sure. It feeds itself. It feeds itself. And so the best thing that as moms we can do when our child is demonstrating tricky behaviors, right, is remember that the child is a hurt child and believes that they're in danger because their attachment is threatened. And it's not about us.
Yeah.
And so I hear kids talk about how their parents will get mad at them for not talking to them. Like, well, why aren't you coming to me? I'm right here.
Yikes.
Like I see parents and kids in sessions together. And sometimes I hear that too, like where the child will reveal something and the mom, because the mom is like, well, I'm right here. Why? You know what I mean? Like, it's hurt. They get hurt. Moms get hurt too.
Yeah.
So it hurts mom because she's like, well, what haven't I done to make you feel like you can come to me? Right. But that's feeding it. So it's like, well, now you're kind of mad at them for not coming to you. So now it's like, it's like this whole thing. So it's like adults need to be resourced by other adults. Kids deserve to have someone to talk to. And if it's not us, at least it's somebody safe. That's what's important. It's important. The child's safety is the most important. The child having a protector is the most important. When we get our feelings hurt by our children and we tell them that they're emotionally damaging us, like you're hurting my feelings, you're making me feel bad, you're hurting me by being you. Oof.
That's a trap.
And you're not saying that out loud necessarily. You're sometimes saying like, it hurts my feelings when you do this. And we think that our intentions are good. We're trying to teach them that their actions have an effect on other people. True story. But the difference is you're their parent and that puts them in danger. So it's a slippery slope, right? So we can get our feelings hurt and we can say, that action can hurt others' feelings. It's not about me. That action can hurt other feelings. Imagine if that was said to you, how might you feel if somebody on the playground told you that same thing, right? Like, I don't know, my kids might call me fat or say that my bangs look stupid or whatever. I don't know.
Right.
Cut bangs one time and my kids didn't like it. Anyway, so whatever. So I might say, I appreciate your honesty. But that stings a little bit. Right. And I would say it like, oh man, that's a bummer. Right. But like, it's not necessarily their responsibility they're not responsible for helping my feelings. They're not responsible for that. So I could say, just FYI, right? Like saying something like that to somebody may hurt their feelings. So if that's kind of what if you're doing that in public, just, that's not a great look, right? Like, it's not great to kind of be overly critical, like maybe focus on people's positive features instead of saying nice, like, if you don't say anything nice to say kind of thing.
Right.
But making that about others, not about you, because if the child is hurting you, then the child will stop believing that it's okay for them to be them. And when they have problems, basically what we're telling our kid at that time is, if we can't tolerate their distress, then they're not allowed to have distress. And then they're going to bottle up their distress. And then they're not going to know how to handle their distress.
Right. And then what happens? Then, they move to other things to release that. So, maybe that's addiction, maybe that's other bad things, sex too early, stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, they're moving on to find that connection somewhere else because they're not getting it, at the source that they need to get it.
Yeah. And so I propose to every single parent, radically accept your child and their quirks. Don't be critical of things that are not consequential. Just let it be. Let it be okay. I propose to make discipline transactional and not personal. And I propose to consider speaking to your child in a way that you would want to speak to a partner, or you would want somebody to speak to you, in terms of making sure that they know that they are accepted and they're loved, and that you are okay. You are their leader. You are their life raft. Remember that you are the one you are the one who's safe. They need your raft. So if you throw out your raft anytime they freak out, well, shit, now you're both up a creek.
Right. And no raft.
No raft. You've got the life raft. So those are my things.
I love it.
Yeah.
This was a good talk, Laura. Thank you so much. I feel like we touched upon a few things where we could have gone off on tangents. So thank you for pulling it back to the topic, because I think we might have just discovered about 5 other topics that we're going to have to do. Just
oh my gosh. Yeah. Seriously. I almost got up and started writing on my whiteboard. I'm like,
I love it.
I have a diagram for this stuff is, it's just everything. If we all had that connection and attunement, if we're just attuned to as human beings, imagine the world and how much safer we would all feel.
Yeah, it's true. 100%. All right. Well, I think this is a good place. I know. I so appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time once again. Everybody out there, this is the fantastic Laura Wood. She has a counseling office. Is that what you call it? I don't know.
Counseling practice.
Yeah, there we go. A counseling office. Yes, she has one of those.
Yes.
And you are in Chandler, right?
I'm in Chandler. Yeah, I'm off of Chandler Boulevard, just east of Dobson Road. And I'm on Facebook and everything, but I'm Benevieri Counseling. And yeah, I do this all the time. I work with parents and kids, and a lot of times together, to just help them figure it out.
Awesome. And your typical clientele, well, why don't you just share with us, like, what's your, what is your favorite to work with, we'll say?
Well, yeah. So I love doing parent-child stuff like this. I love having moms and kids in session to really do this work, because it's restorative to even have some of these moments. Like, you've not done there's no too much damage. So I love when moms are able to come in and start repairing that relationship with kids. I work with kids of all ages. I have kids as young as 6, and then all the way up to adults. A lot of times, I'll have adults come in who have had complex trauma, so childhood trauma, but mom-kid attachment stuff is pretty much my jam.
Awesome. And you're amazing at it. So thank you again for your fantastic professional insight. We
Oh my
appreciate
God.
it. We will
Thank
see
you so
you
much.
again next month for mental
Yep.
wealth, 4:00 Arizona time, last Wednesday of the month.
All right. Thank
All right.
you.
Bye, guys.
Okay, bye.